Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. My name is Rory, and if you're just tuning into this channel for the first time, we do two things here. One of those things is what we're doing tonight, which is we're going to play through a solo tabletop RPG, primarily as a sort of writing game, a prompt game. If you are here live, you can join in the live chat, which is apparently, and it's in a third-party objective study, but the best place to be on the entire internet. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to argue with science. The citations will be pinned in a comment one day. But you can join in there, and then, especially tonight, you can help give prompts to me so that I can, try and write around them. Sometimes people try to mess me up. Some people try to help me. It's up to you which you want to play. But if you're not watching this live, one of the great benefits of that is down in the description below. There will be timestamps that let you jump ahead to whatever part of the show interests you the most, including whatever we came up with, which we'll read back at the end. And what we're doing tonight is we're playing a little bit of, not a whole game, but a little bit of what's called a hex crawl. Which uses a lot of rolling tables and stuff to create a kind of D&D experience. This one's pretty close to it, a D&D experience. But you can do it yourself. That's the basic premise of these sorts of solo hex crawls. In terms of me, though, I was getting better. I was pretty much better. And then for unrelated other health reasons, my immune system bottomed out and I re-sickened. It's like the same thing back again. So I don't expect this will last too long, but for now I have actually quite a sore throat, which means that at some point I may just have to call it. Now, let's get on to saying hello, and then I will explain the rules of the game. And then we'll do some playing and writing, and we'll sort of tick-tock back and forth between playing and writing. I see Witchery, Uncle Kitty, Jumstore, Zombie Wolf, Tammy, who is apparently also unwell. I'm sorry to hear that, Tammy. And also welcome back, Uncle Kitty. It's good to see you again. And GS and Suki. Welcome, and thank you for watching. You folks, what is the weird, Uncle, oh, we're talking about work, I see. We usually have some weird corollary topic going on while I do these things, so we'll see what today's is. Center that a little better. Okay, well, I do want to get to the game because I don't know what my stamina will be like. We'll see how we do. This part of the show is called Lit Games. It is pretty much the whole game. It stands for Literature Games. And basically what we do is we use solo tabletop RPGs, largely indie, largely from itch.io. I don't think I've ever done anything that wasn't indie, but that wouldn't be the end of the world if I did. And we kind of showcase the game. We play around with it. I wouldn't always trust us for the rules. I mean, I'm going to go through the rules in rough. There's a lot of rules in this game, and some of them don't matter too much for our format. But if you are interested in a game and this video isn't live, I'll have the comment pinned below with the link to the game. But this game I actually got through Solo But Not Alone 4, which is a bundle deal from itch.io right now. For I think it was like 15 American or something, or 10 American dollars. You get 125 solo tabletop RPGs, of which I would say at least half are pretty good. Some are like not really solo tabletop RPGs. The way this stream really took this direction in the first place is I bought Solo But Not Alone 3 last year. So it's like my year has come around again. And this game is in that bundle. Let me have one of many drinks of water this evening and get into the rules. People are concerned about my well-being. Don't worry, I am surrounded by people that would tackle me if I was doing that badly. I am certainly not unloved and unprotected. But thank you for your concern. All right. So this game is called Pocket Hex. Sorry, it's a little off center. Let's see if I can make that a little better. Pocket Hex is a pretty straightforward system that operates on 2d6. D6s. D6 for most people is just regular dice. On 2d6 systems, when you encounter something, you roll a 2d6, you add them together. In this system, anyways, you add them together, and that value, if it's higher than whatever you're trying to beat, you win. Right? Now, I've pinned a comment in the chat that gives the what they call, I mean, I know them as challenge ratings, but what do they call them again? Difficulty scores. I've given you the difficulty scores that this game works on, and easy would be an 8, a moderate would be a 10, and a hard would be a 12, because one of the things that's going to happen is as we move through these hexes, we'll roll and get prompts. But I want you guys to give me ideas of what my character is facing, and then we'll sort of write around that. So if you have a monster and you're like, hey, it's a DS12 lizard with the legs of a lamb or something like that, then that's what I'll be facing, and I'll try to... I'm kind of like hiring you guys to be a sort of DM. It could be traps as well. That works for traps as well if you want to give me a trap or something that some encounter or something. The way the game works is actually pretty cool, and it's why I wanted to play it. I'll show you how it works here with their own example, because I'm not going to do better than them. Let's say a giant cement worm bears its concrete teeth at you, hissing rubble boulders. It has a difficulty, whatever, what is it? The S again? Skill, difficulty, score. That's right. Of 12, so that's the highest you can go. You attack rolling your 2d6, and you get a 9. And then, and I'll show you the character sheet in a moment, you can add whatever. It has 3 skills. It's Dex, Strength, and Intelligence. They give you 3 points to spread amongst them. I've already picked my skills. You add that to the 2d6 total. In this case, this is a 2 because he's a strong guy. And 1 from the sword and a 1 from the shield, so his total is 13. So your full roll is the 13 minus 12. And if that number, it's your roll minus their DS. And if that number is positive, that's how much damage they take. And if that if that is negative, that's how much damage you take. Or me in this case. So that's a pretty elegant system, and also their score is their health pool. So if it's a DS12, that means it has 12 hit points. Okay. There is some stuff about inventory here. I'm going to say it briefly, but I'm not going to dwell on it. The inventory score is just a number, and that's how many items you can carry. You start with an inventory score of 8. When your HP reaches 0, you die. And we heal by playing through 7 days. When you reach the end of 7 days, you can spend a day resting and you get your health points back. Okay, you can start on any hex. You can roll to determine where we're going, but I'm probably just going to ask chat. And the only other thing is we get to pick 2 more items. I think based on what I've already established with the character, it's going to be a backpack and oil. Okay, and the rest of it I'll explain as we go. But the gist of it is we'll meet NPCs and stuff and we'll make it up. Zombie Wolf says, I'm actually playing an RPG game with friends right now. My character got to adopt an owlbear cub. Aww. I named him Zakai, or Zakai, and he is my son now. You know, is there a better story of a monster in D&D having an arc towards a hero than the owlbear, because the original, if you don't know, the original concept for the owlbear was it was a terrible abomination, not even naturally born, created by a mad wizard, and they were absolutely frothing at the mouth, mad angry all the time. Then what happened was it just was cute. The art got cuter, I guess, and more endearing, and it was a cool concept. And so more and more people just wanted to be it. And there was this controversy, and this should give you an example of how little must be going on in the average D&D player's life. I'm a D&D player, but I didn't understand why people were bickering about this. When the movie came out, the D&D movie came out, they have a druid who wild shapes into an owlbear, and everyone went mad because an owlbear is an abomination, not a natural creature, and they were like, she shouldn't be able to wild shape in it. Who cares? Why would anyone care? This is not, D&D is not a setting that is very consistent by design. It's just up to you and your DM. Anyways. Yeah, that's right. Witchery says technically illegal, but rule of cool. And that's the thing. The first rule in Pathfinder and D&D is whatever's fun trumps. Okay. Hopefully you guys have the gist of it. You're going to pitch monsters to me as I move around, but let me introduce you to Pete, my character. Pete has a 1 in strength, a 0 in dex, and a 2 in intelligence. His weapon is a dagger from his uncle, and he has a backpack full of oil, which I'm going to tell you about now, because I wrote a little blurb to begin this. Pete was not a talented man. He knew it, his friends knew it, and prospective employers could clearly see it. Nevertheless, Pete was always quick to add that he was reliable, persistent. This made him a passable door-to-door salesman in his town, one of the most passable to ever live. The trouble was that his product, effectively a pyramid scheme for fancy lantern oil, did not have many repeat customers. After a couple of years, Pete had exhausted every door within the confines of the town walls. Pete was readying to quit, moving on, but his boss offered him a new opportunity. Expand into the wilds. Where others saw psychopathic abominations skulking in the mountains and trees, Pete's boss saw new markets, new opportunities, and now Pete must travel the land trying to sell new small business opportunities in his pyramid scheme of lantern oil to goblins, beholders, and liches. And that's my premise. Pete is going to try and sell stuff to things that are probably going to try and kill him, and he's going to be left with no choice but to kill him. Zombie Wolf says, my DM is great because a nat 20 always gets 100% regardless of our level and the boss level. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like even skill checks? Or do you mean the attack? Because that's rules as written for attack. Oh, or do you mean the damage? Oh yeah, max criticals. I run with max criticals too. I like the wonkiness. Okay. Pete knew a bit about foraging, so he had only packed a single day's rations, leaving more room in his bag for scented and colored lantern oil. He stood at the edge of the wilds, breathed in the dewy morning air, and pondered a split in his path. One curved up into the bustling, dark woods, and the other bent down into the open valley and outer farms. Okay, and now I'll show you the map. Yeah, there's a map. Can you believe that? GS says, who only packs a single day's rations? Zombie Wolf says, yeah, max critical. Sorry, should have been more specific. That's okay. You don't have to always be specific. That's why we have words and questions. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Remember, MLM's revenue aren't garnered by how much the employees sell, but how many they recruit. The more underlings they have, the higher they are in the pyramid, for sure. My knowledge of MLMs is a little limited. So this is the map. It is a hex crawl. I'm just zooming out so you can see the size of it. We're not obviously going to go that far. I started us up in the top corning. This is our little guy here, which is taken from the art on the front of it. The forest is here, and the open fields are here. Either way, we're going to roll to sort of generate what's in these. But which way do you want to go, guys? Do you want to go to the forest? Should Pete go into the dark, scary forest and try to hawk his oil? Or should he go down into the farms and try to hawk his oil? Witchery says, I hope there's a map. It's a hex crawl. And thus I deliver. I'm just letting chat catch up. If you don't know, there's a delay. If you're wondering, what is that noise? That noise is a very old laptop trying its best. Okay, guys? Jumpstore says, that's fine, Roy. I only knew that because John Oliver did an episode about MLNs on his show last week tonight. Oh, yeah. I may have seen it. I did somehow luck into having HBO for a while, and I do like John Oliver. I grew up in the peak of Jon Stewart and Colbert being, 11 to 12, 5 nights a week. I grew up with that. So all those folks close to my heart. John Oliver, probably the most of all. Farms, unless Pete is insane. Okay, let's go down to the farms. Which means we'll probably have an NPC that gives us some stuff to do. Okay, so this is the generation booklet. Oh, I gotta fix this. This game is split out into a few booklets. This is the generation booklet. We can decide what's on this hex. It can be a city, a forest, seaside, lighthouse, hill and cliff. But I've sort of already said it's kind of a farm. I don't think they actually have one for the farm, so let's do wildlife. Well, it could be hill as well. No, let's do wildlife. And so what you do is you take 2d10. This game really does assume you have a full dice set for D&D. Sorry, I'm digging through my 4 sets of dice, which is low for most DMs. This is my pretty green and gold dice, metal dice. Okay, so it's a 69. I didn't even put it together as I said it. Oh, God. Do I even want to look at the chat? Let's go. Nice. Nice, nice. But it's not actually a 69. It's a 6 and a 9. So, the wildlife gen, Witchery says weapons of table destruction. Yeah, I don't really, what's the word I'm looking for? I roll in a box anyways. I have a nice little custom box my partner made me. So this is about the creatures that are there that we may have a problem with. Let's do petal scorpions, whatever the hell those are. I mean, it's up to us to kind of imagine. There we go. Is there anything I can close that will help this be less laggy? Yes. Okay. That might help. Okay, and then that's a 9 and a 6, so swarmed upon an object. So petal scorpion swarmed upon an object. I'll show you how this works in a minute. We gotta basically produce some prompts here. Uncle Kitty says the tiny scorpions that live in flowers, maybe? Is that a real thing or is that an imaginary thing? I'll admit I don't know that much about that sort of stuff. I was a liberal arts student. My knowledge of this sort of thing is limited. I'm also going to roll on the Hill and Cliff Gen because I want some more stuff about the world. That's an 83. Okay, well, we're not doing that, so to steep to venture, I guess, and skeletal fossil hieroglyphs. Okay. Now, if you're wondering where is all of this going, it's not that structured. It's sort of up to you what you want to do with all this. And there's one more like prompt we can roll on down on the bottom here. We roll on our luck table, which is just a sort of color text thing to help us. And for that, we need a d20. This is my original d20. It's a 16. Perilous. Our luck is perilous. And then foibles are the thing that I understand the least, but they're basically, I guess, debuffs for the day. Each hex is a day, essentially. And that is rolled on a 10. It's a 1. Anxious. Misplaced an item of import. Well, the only important item we have is our oil. Which is perfect. Or I guess his one ration. Okay. Witchery says they are praying mantises that look like petals. They're called orchid mantises. Oh, I do know orchid mantises. Are they called petal scorpions? Or do you just mean as an idea? Oh, we're talking about how much we love shiny things. Yes. As I said to someone recently, the dice goblin does not ask, "What do I already have?" They ask, "What could I have?" Okay. So we have some prompts here. We'll see what we do with them. The reason why I have the difficulty scores up there is if at some point you're like, "Hey, Rory, you're going to encounter this in the field," you know what the scores are, but if you keep giving me 12s, then like my character's just gonna die. It's not gonna be a very fun game. But if you have an idea, tag it with a difficulty skill, and I will try and do something with it. Peter was not. What was his luck today? Anxious? Anxious. His luck was perilous. Not good. Peter was anxious about a world this open and verdant. He had heard the poets that came through town blab on about rainbows, arching? That's a good question. What do you think, chat? Well, what do you know? I think that's just an is or it isn't. Arching over wheatgrass, glittering with dew, and it always sounded a bit much for Pete. But the farm seemed safe enough. And at least it had structures. There are 12mm scorpions. Is it like spiders were like some of the worst ones on a venom level or the smallest? Uncle Kitty says, I've written monsters for games for 20 plus years. Oh, that's so cool, Uncle Kitty. If you're comfortable answering it, I'm curious what games. The first one that comes to mind for me is Monster of the Week, if it's a tabletop. Yes and no. Okay. I don't like bugs, but give me a snake. And I am like a kid in a candy store. We have a snake. Her name is Buttercup. She's a ball python. And at least it had structures he could recognize. The winding path down ended near a decaying fence, where a group of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Sallow? Yeah, sure. Sallow-faced. I don't think it really works. A group of bone-thin dairy cows were chewing at the roots of a dead field. Uncle Kitty says, I mostly write for D&D, Hero System, and a Call of Cthulhu. I have played 2 of those. I feel like Call of Cthulhu would be a hard one to write for. Because it's like, first of all, you have such a lineage of monsters. But a problem, as a person who is clearly a fan of the world, the problem is some of the monsters are very similar. It's like many-eyed gibbering. They're all just gibbering mouths. So I imagine it might be hard to make them distinct. The fence was still standing, and the cows seemed eager to leave its confines. Pete swung open the gate. And let's see, my first test. I'm going to do a dex roll, see if he can close it before the cows rush him and leave this place. So I'm going to roll 2d6. He has a 0 in dex, because I was like, why would he be dexterous? Which means, chat, I mean, I can just decide, I'm not going to do this every time, but chat, what is the difficulty level, the difficulty score? Is that what it was? Difficulty score. Remember, there's a pinned comment there to tell you. Easy is an 8, moderate is 10, hard is a 12. What is my difficulty score to getting the fence shut before a bunch of hungry cows push out of it and start feasting on the grass outside? Just give me a number. That's what I'm asking for. I have my roll. I know what my value is, but I am curious what this check is. Moderate, 10. GS says 12. Well, I rolled a 6. So, and he's got a 0, so I had nothing, and I don't think there's anything in his items that helped. Zombie Wolf says, my group played Call of Cthulhu a few years back, and it was complete chaos. Well, that's what tabletops are about, aren't they? Jumpstore says, the more venomous scorpions don't need big pinchers to hold onto the prey for long periods while the venom takes effect, and that's why they can afford to have smaller pinchers. Man, there's a bunch of scorpion facts going on in there. They are neat. I think of all the, like, creepy crawlies that people are traditionally scared of, I think scorpions are the most interesting to me. They are, like, nature's tank. They're not. But that's what comes to mind when I see them. Pete swung open the gate and was rushed by the herd of hungry cattle. One by one, the massive mooing beasts shoved him aside. GS says, Witchery would know more than I do about cows. I know Witchery you do horses. Do you also deal with cows? My experiences with cows have been positive, I'll say in general. One by one, the massive mooing beast shoved him aside and rushed for the pastures of tall grass beyond their fence line. Witchery says we had cows, yes. How cool. Okay, and a rush for the pastures of tall grass beyond their fence line. Pete muttered to himself, well, I hope that doesn't matter. His thought was quickly interrupted by a knocking on the windows of the small bungalow. Bungalow? Let's just say house. Let's not be fancy. Behind him. Pressed up against its distorted glass was the faces of two adults and one child. They were shouting something and pointing off to the left. Against the back corner. Of the fenced area. There was distress, and their eyes were wide. Witchery says he will get trampled if he gets stuck between cows in a hurry and their destination. Maybe I should have given him damage for how much he missed. Witchery says cows mosey more than run usually though, unless you get behind them and spook them. I think I'm working on the idea that they were spooked, yeah. Uncle Kitty says run, Pete, run quite fast, but he's got sales to make. Pete nodded with concern in his furrowed brow, keeping eye contact, as was his sales training. I gotta put this character in a one-shot. It's just so my party kills me. And said, "Good morning, good folks." Oh, what should this business be called? I never even considered that. He sells, like, basically lamp oil that has some filings or herbs in them or something to make them smell or turn green or something like that. That's what I was thinking. Unnecessarily fancy lamp oil. I represent the lamp oil opportunity center. And I would like to discuss with you the voice is raised to a pitch. Lamp, bath, and beyond. The voice is raised to a pitch that managed to penetrate the thick old window and said, "Look out for the pedal scorpions, you idiot." Pete looked over to the corner of the fence at the only plants that remained unchewed by the fled cattle, and saw they teemed with life in a swarm, the form of a swarm, the form of a swarm of small creatures. Like ants, but several times the size. Pete nodded, turned back to the family, and drew out the dagger that his uncle had given him as a boy. It was not a functional dagger. In the sense that it was made of a shiny, brittle metal that failed to hold much of an edge. GS is laughing and says, forget the beware of dog signs to scare away solicitors. Put up lookout for petal scorpions, idiot. Jumpstore says, I know this is gross to everyone else, but hearing swarms of scorpion crawling around these flowers made me go, ah. I think something as large as a scorpion wouldn't gross me out to see it crawling around. It's when it's lots of little small things. Pete gave his $40 smile, held up the blade, and said, worry not, folks. I'm an adventurer. Zombie Wolf said, people made weapons of solid gold, but when they realized gold was soft, they just used their weapons as more expensive ornaments for the rich. Yeah, but they did make some pretty cool looking ones. GS says, I have a thing for seagulls. I saw this seagull on a beach once that just for some reason was hanging around us. It was a young one that had a little bunch of little gray feathers and stuff. I forget what we called him, but he was... we ended up buying a little carving of him. And kept... well, not of him, but of something that reminded of him, and keep it on our bathroom counter. Uncle Kitty says, oh God, Pete, why? Well, because he's an adventurer. Let me deal with these vermin, and we can get down to brass tacks about a better, more stable future for your family with... Come on. The lamp. What the hell did I call it? Beginner set named... Was it that you had witchery lamp, Bath and Beyond? Bath and Beyond. At that point, GS says, Rory's a natural salesman. He's too good at this. On the contrary, I had to deal with a lot of salesmen in another life. What you're seeing is my disdain for... Not for all salesmen, no, but for a very particular type. Those people, because there's like salesmen who are just good at their job and they tell you what you need. You know, because I do think salesmen have an actual function. Their job is to know a product line and to match it up with your needs, and I think that's helpful. But then there's those ones who make it their whole identity. That's all they are. At that point, the swarm of petal scorpions had reached Pete's ankle. If anybody's wondering, by the way, and they've never played D&D, this is kind of what D&D is. I would say this is pretty much what it is, except the difference would be I would be narrating some stuff, and then I would ask you to roll things, and then based on the rolls, we sort of decide what your character does about it. It's a little more tactical. You have more abilities, but Zombie Wolf says, at least you channeled that negativity into something positive. That's why I write. The swarm of petal scorpions had reached Pete's ankle. Now, Pete was an average man who had never, save for today, left the city walls. Zombie Wolf says, I always fed the seagulls and pigeons and crows. Really any bird that happened to cross my path. Yeah, I like birds. They're very intelligent. Crows in particular freak me out. In a good way. Now, Pete was an average man who had never, save for today, left the city walls. Pete could not have known through his experiences of learning letters and safety of the capital city, or his years of selling door to door in that same city, that the sting of the petal scorpion was ranked only slightly less painful than being torn apart over a course of days by needles warmed in hellfire. GS calls the chat the infirmary because everyone's sick. Good one, GS. Witcher says crows will generationally traumatize you if you're wrong them. Yeah, that's right. They're gangster birds. I knew a few people actually who basically befriended crows. It's painful than being normal. So, when the stinger found its target in his pale heel, Pete's sales pitch ranked up to a high pitch. High pitch. Squealing, that is. That is. And frantic stabbing in the direction of his own leg. Okay, chat. What do you think should be the difficulty level of the petal scorpions? Because I gotta fight them now. Witchery says if you befriend them, they will bring you trinkets, sometimes that they stole from other people. Yeah, that's right, my little gangsters. Tammy says, my daughter used to feed the crows in our apartment until the maintenance guy threw away the peanut. Aww. Jumpstore says, so that's where Great Grammy's wedding ring went. I'm gonna hustle with some birds. Uncle Kitty says, that's like fighting fire ants that's at least a 10. I agree. By the way, you can use values in between, right? Like, if you want to make it very easy, you can go down to 6. If you want to make it, you know, somewhere between moderate and hard, you can go with 11, so on. Okay, so a 10. He's using a dagger, which I think is traditionally a dex weapon, but I'm treating it as a strength weapon here. It gives him a 1. Although arguably this really crappy dagger probably wouldn't even be a 1, but... And his strength is a 1. No. Yes. Strength is a 1. So, I'll be adding 2 to this, I guess? Nice. It's a 5 and a 6, so it's 11. Plus 2 is 13. On a 10 means I do 3 damage, which means they're down to a 7. Panic was a benefit to Pete, though. Much like the hysterical strength of a mother saving a child from beneath a fallen milling stone, Pete found the precise accuracy he needed to skewer several of the admittedly pretty pink Are they arachnids? Or are they something else that's kind of in between? I remember them being arachnids, but like I said, I'm not a biologist. Zombie Wolf says, maybe I'm a crow in a human's body because I like shiny things too. We've come full circle in the chat. I think you might have a story there, Zombie Wolf. Jumpstore says, yes, they're arachnids. I love when a person is passionate about a topic. I'll have to do more scorpion stuff so we can make more use of your passion. What are other people passionate about in the chat? I can just keep it in the back of my head. What's the thing you know too much about? Pete found the precise accuracy he needed to skewer several of the admittedly pretty pink swarm of arachnids that were surrounding him. Each time he met his mark, he squealed, "Take that!" I can't do it with my voice. Uncle Kitty says, paleontology and folklore. Kindred spirits in the folklore. My sister really likes archaeology. Witchery says, I'm a walking Wikipedia. The list is too long. I was going to make a joke about that, but I'll let it be. Weaponry and animals. Oh, what kind of weaponry, Uncle Kitty? Like historical weaponry or modern? Oh, if it's not just animals, then I count mythology and history. What kind of mythology, Jumpstore? I know you mentioned Greek before, but is there something beyond that? Or at least I think it was you who mentioned Greek. Each time he met his mark, he squealed, "Take that, ee!" and danced in place, swatting at his pants with his offhand. And Gia says medical stuff. How interesting. And dogs and art. What kind of art? Jumpstore says all of the mythology obsessed. What is the most underrated mythology, you think? Zombie Wolf says world culture and useless trivia. Give me some useless trivia, Zombie Wolf. By the end of this initial panic, he had a writhing skewer of painful pests on his dagger, but they were still coming. He shook them off and went back for another round. Whenever I roll +2, it needs to be to 10, I think it was. Ooh, that's not good. So that's a 6. So he takes 4 damage. He doesn't have a lot of health, man. Although I do kind of like the idea that Pete is just going to get killed at his first house he goes to. Uncle Kitty says, Inuit myth. Those guys have the weirdest critters. I have a book here. Where is it? Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Which is an anthology of Arctic horror stories, primarily written by people of, Inuit tradition and so on, called Taktumi. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. That is really cool. Like all collections of short stories, some are better than others, but overall, it's a really unique voice. They're all written by northern writers, but mostly native. And they make reference to a lot of those creatures. I recommend that book. It was gotten by a friend. Yeah, I couldn't tell you where to get it, but it's a good book. It's a good book if you're into that kind of scene, I guess. Ooh, that's a good one. Zombie Wolf says the reason why knife blades are considered weapons is so long as the blade is at least 3 inches is because you only need to penetrate a human body 3 inches deep to hit something vital. And this, I assume, is the response to the useless trivia, but that's obviously very useful trivia. I'll be sure to measure my blades. Anyways. Let's get back to killing Pete. This time, Pete was emboldened. He howled in unearthly howl that was louder than any noise he had ever made, and said, "I am Pete, destroyer of worlds." Then drove down his blade in a wild fury, missing every shot, every time, and being stung into writhing agony under the window of the wide-eyed family. Oh, Tammy says, I got my daughter a zombie machete one year. It has a nasty blade. Is that their first birthday? I kid. Uncle Kitty says, somewhere on a hill there's an ogre watching Pete quietly saying to his companion, "Hey Bert, you gotta see this." I'm gonna add that in, why not? Pete would never become aware of this fact, but on a hill... Oh, I guess let's switch that around. That's confusing order. On a hill, out of sight, but nearby, there stood an ogre, watching Pete fail. The ogre called in his rough voice, "Hey Bert." This is not the voice I want to do, but I can't do voices with my throat the way it is. "You gotta see this." I guess it would be more like, "You gotta see this." Pete would never become aware of this fact that two ogres laughed as he neared death. But we do. They watched as Pete tried a new tactic. Wild arcing swings, skimming over the dirt. Tammy says, my daughter is a weapon fanatic, any and all. So the weapon I have, I think I've actually showed on stream, but it was a long time ago, is a real sword. It's made of rolled steel, is that what it's called? Because most like prop swords are made of stainless steel, which is fine if you're not going to fight with it, but if you're going to fight with it, it would shatter. This is a proper smithed by hand sword. It's quite expensive. That has a brass skull on its pommel. It's a cutlass style sword. And it has a kraken as its hand basket. And a leather wrap on its handle. I bought it for the same reason people buy oil paintings, right? It was a beautiful piece of work. And I have that in my game room. My partner is an actual sword fighter, though. She has a real functional sword, but they dull the ends. This one doesn't. Okay, let's see if Pete's new strategy of swinging wildly works. Okay. Okay, well, it didn't work. I rolled a 5 and a 2, which is a 7 plus 2 from the 1 of his strength and the 1 of his sword or his dagger. So that's a 9, so he takes another 1 damage. I think we might have to have Pete run away. Jumpstore says, I hate it when I see him. It's made of stainless steel. Get your enlarged butter knife out of my face. I mean, it's fine if you're getting props, right? Like, if you're going to get, because the price difference is massive. If you're going to get, like, a propped Lord of the Rings sword or something, right? You don't need it to be a real sword. That'd be nice, I guess, but that's the difference between, like, a $400 sword and, like, a $3,000 sword. Not that mine costs that much, but for how ornate those swords are, I think it would. All this did was stir up the ire of the smaller ones. Who began to nip at his breast. At least 1,000 times. Okay, let's roll again, because I'm... kind of rolled weird, so I'm going to roll that again. Well, +2, that's a 4. Which means I think he's dead. Because he rolled as low as he could roll, really. And the thing is a challenge rating of 10. 10 minus 4 is, yeah, he's... Alright, well. Folks, you killed Pete. Well, we don't... I mean, I don't want to bum anybody out. We can just say that he passes out anyways. Everyone's crying. All right, Pete. Pete is fine. We'll just say that he gets knocked out. Pete, salesman of scented lamp oil and purported destroyer of worlds, fell unconscious. Witchery says he died as he lived stupidly. Well, I mean, that's got to be the closing line. Jumpstore says, oh, so Pete's a Pokemon. Yes, yeah, that's right. For those who don't know, in Pokemon, they don't die. They pass out. They go unconscious. Because your cockfighting game might distress children if they died. Purported destroyer fell unconscious to the chagrin and amazement of the family inside. How about this? I'm gonna use my coin. We'll give him a 1 death saving throw, for those who don't know what those are. This is my Metroid coin. I've shown it before. One side has a Samus with a skull face. The other side has Samus, and then the reflection of her browser or her visor is the animals, because I got it from, which is going on right now. Actually, I'm going to go back to watching it after the stream. AGDQ, because there's always a vote as to whether in the speed run for Metroid Prime, whether you would save the animals or not, because it costs a bit of time, but there's the psychology of saving the animals. If you don't know what any of that means, it doesn't matter. It just means if I get the red side, Pete's dead. Whoops. Unfortunately, I mean, that's not a valid flip, but unfortunately, Zombie Wolf, I don't think you can get it anymore. They only do merch like this the week of the marathon. Does Pete live? Can I make this? There you go. Jumpstore says, I always save the animals regardless of time. It is, I think, the one that wins most of the time, but it doesn't win as often as you would expect. What a loser you are, Pete. I don't think you've succeeded on anything. Here's what we'll do. We'll kill Pete. But I already have a plot in mind where we could resurrect Pete. If I play this again, which I might. I have enjoyed this and its flexibility. It is very D&D to me. When asked later by a group of adventurers that saved the family from their swarm, who the man below their window was. The family, with a melancholic look and dewy eyes, would tell them there lies Pete, salesman of lamp oil, that he did not have in his backpack. If you guys remember that prompt. He lived as he died. Stupidly. The end? Question mark? Pete will return. I don't know. What about Pete the Lich? Same personality, really. Okay, let's see what we came up with. I have a drink of water and I will try to read this back. Jump Story says he's certainly full of enough venom for them to successfully digest him. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's because you just want to know how the story came together. And we told the story of Pete using the game Pocket Hex. Pocket Hex is a hex crawler. I did a more elaborate explanation in the beginning, but basically, as you can see, we got very far. That is one square that Pete moved. You crawl across a hex, and you roll for some prompts when you get to a place, and then you just sort of develop a story. And then you roll 2d6 and you add your stats and any abilities or items you have, which helps you succeed or fail. And then we sort of write about those successes and failures. And our story, as I said, concerned Pete, who had a dagger from his uncle. So I'm going to read you now who Pete is and how Pete lived. Pete was not a talented man. He knew it. His friends knew it, and prospective employers could clearly see it. Nevertheless, Pete was always quick to add that he was a reliable and persistent person. This made him a passable door-to-door salesman in his town, the most passable door-to-door salesman to have ever lived in that town. The trouble was that the product he was selling was effectively a pyramid scheme for fancy lantern oil, and that didn't have very many repeat customers. And it was only a matter of years. Pete had exhausted every door within the confines of the town walls. So Pete was ready to quit, move on to something else. But his boss offered him a new opportunity. Expand beyond the walls, out into the wilds. You see, where others saw psychopathic abominations skulking in the mountains and trees, Pete's boss saw new markets and new opportunities. And so now Pete was obligated to travel that land, trying to sell his new business, small business opportunities to goblins, beholders, and liches alike. Now, Pete knew a bit about foraging, or at least so he claimed, so he had only packed a single day's ration, leaving more room in his bag for more packets of scented and colored lantern oil, his main trade. He stood at the edge of the wilds, breathing in the dewy mountain air and pondering a split in his path. One curved up to the bustling, dark woods, and the other bent down into the more open valley of outer farms from the capital city. Peter was anxious about a world this open and verdant. He had heard poets come through town and blab about rainbows arching over wheatgrass, glittering with dew, and it always sounded a bit much for Pete. But the farm seemed safe enough, and at least it had structures he could recognize. So the winding path down from the city walls to this valley brought him near a decaying fence where a group of bone-thin dairy cows were chewing at the roots of a dead field. The fence about them was still standing, but the cows seemed eager to leave. Pete swung open the gate and was immediately rushed by a herd of hungry cattle. One by one, the massive mooing beasts shoved him aside and rushed for the pastures of tall grass beyond their fence line. Pete muttered to himself, I hope that doesn't matter. His thought was quickly interrupted by a knocking on the windows of the small house behind him. Pressed up against the distorted glass were the faces of two adults and one child, and they were shouting something with such fervor and pointing off to the left against the back corner of the fenced area. There was distress as their eyes widened. Pete nodded with concern in his furrowed brow, keeping eye contact, as his sales training dictated, and said, "Good morning, good folks. I represent the Lamp Oil Opportunity Center, and I would like to discuss with you." The voice raised to a pitch that managed to penetrate the thick old window, and said, "Look out for the petal scorpions, you idiot!" Pete looked over at the corner of the fence, at the only plants that remained unchewed by the fled cattle, and saw they teemed with life in the form of a swarm of small creatures, like ants, but several times the size. Pete nodded, turned back to the family, and drew out the dagger that his uncle had given him as a boy. It was not a functional dagger in the sense that it was made of a shiny, brittle metal that failed to hold much of an edge. Rather, Pete gave his $40 smile, held up the blade, and said, "Worry not, folks. I'm an adventurer. Let me deal with these vermin, and we can get back down to brass tacks about a better, more stable future for your family with the lamp oil opportunity centers beginner set named Lamp, Math, and Beyond." At that point, a swarm of metal scorpions had reached, petal scorpions had reached Pete's ankle. Now, Pete was an average man who never, save for today, left the city walls. Pete could not have known, though, through his experiences of learning letters in the safety of the capital city or his years of selling door to door in that same city, that the sting of the petal scorpion was ranked only slightly less painful than being torn apart over a course of days by needles warmed in hellfire. So when the stinger found its target in his pale heel, Pete's sales pitch ranked up to a high pitch, squealing that is, and frantic stabbing in the direction of his own leg. Panic was this time a benefit to Pete, though. Much like the hysterical strength of a mother saving a child from beneath a fallen milling stone, Pete found precise accuracy he needed to skewer several of the admittedly pretty pink swarm of arachnids that were surrounding him. Each time he met his mark, he squealed, "Ah! Take that!" and danced in place, swatting at his pants with his off hands. By the end of this initial panic, he had a writhing skewer of painful pests on his dagger, but they were still coming. He shook them off his dagger and went back for another round at the lively ones. This time Pete was emboldened. He howled an unearthly howl that was louder than any noise he'd ever made, but still quieter than most, and said, "I am Pete, destroyer of worlds!" Then drove down his blade in a wild fury, missing every shot, every time, and being stung into a writhing agony under the window of the wide-eyed family, who could not understand why he wouldn't run. On a hill out of sight, but nearby, there stood an ogre watching Pete fail. The ogre called in his rough voice, "Hey, Bert, you gotta see this." Pete would never become aware of this fact that two ogres laughed at as he neared death, but we should be. Back to Pete. They watched as Pete tried a new tactic, wild arcing swings skimming over the dirt. All this did, though, was stir up the ire of the smaller ones, who began to nip at his breast at least 1,000 times. Pete, salesman of scented lamp oil and purported destroyer of worlds, fell dead to the chagrin and amazement of the family inside. When asked later by a group of adventurers that saved the family successfully from their swarm who the man below their window was, the family, with melancholic look and dewy eyes, would tell them, "There lies Pete, salesman of lamp oil, that he did not have in his backpack. Don't know if he forgot it. But he lived as he died. Stupidly." We're talking about movies. I love movies. Did anyone actually go and watch Brick on my recommendation, or find it even? I know what the questions that's coming from me asking that. You don't even need to ask. The answer is no, but I know what it's coming. They're talking about horror films being made of stuff in the public domain, or recently in the public domain. It's weird to me that people use that as a case against stuff being in the public domain when, like, it does no violence to anything. You know, the kids aren't going to be seeing it. If anything, it's a case for it because it's silly. It's fun. Art is not religion. It's fun. Witchery says, "Thanks for the stream, Rory. I hope that everyone is better pronto." Yeah, the stream made me feel better. I mean, I don't know if it actually made me better, but it like raised my spirits. So it was good to hang around you guys. Man, this game is fun. I recommend this game. I mean, I do recommend most of the games, but some of them I'm a little quieter on because maybe I don't. Jumpstore says, thanks for the stream tonight. Rory is fun even though you can do the voices all the time. Yeah, I'll have to double up next time. Uncle Kitty says, is Brick the 2006 movie? Yeah, it's I would suspect a person, I'm guessing here, but who is my age or older and into movies probably knows it. But it's one of those movies where if people ask me, like, what's a movie I really like that nobody's really seen, it's Brick. But it's hard to find. I still have my copy I bought. I mentioned this last stream, but I bought from Rogers Video when I worked there. Zombie Wolf says, this was fun, Rory. Thanks for the stream. Every time I've tried to do a repeat stream of a game, numbers dive, right? Like, nobody looks at it. But I might take that risk with this one because I feel like there's more ground to cover with Pete. So I don't know. We'll see. But there is a bunch of stuff I want to get to. There was the actual game I was planning to do tonight was called Bumbling, which is about being a little bumblebee. But partially because of sickness, I think, I just couldn't wrap my head around the rule set. And I was like, wow, this is not a good idea if I can't get a handle on it. Orchery says, I'm here regardless. Jumpstory says, I did see Brick when you recommended it, but I'm sad to say I barely remember what happened. That's okay. Not for everybody. Anyways. How can I be a nuisance if you don't show up? How can you be a nuisance if you do? Anyways, let me wrap it up here. I gotta go gargle some salt water. Jumpstore says my memory is for mythology only. I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, it's all subjective, right? Like, I'm putting that out there because I think it's a well-made movie. I think that's inarguable. But whether it will appeal is entirely personal. Uncle Kitty said, I'll be here when the other guards don't call off. Oh, yes. I saw in the beginning of the stream before it started that you mentioned you were a security guard. Well, that's good to hear. Because this was good fun. I do recommend anybody who's a fan of this sort of stuff to go buy the Solo But Not Alone 4 on itch.io. I think it goes to... Let me not guess. Let me look it up and remind myself what it actually goes towards. I have a thing in my mind, but if it's wrong, I'll feel like an idiot. It's for charity anyways. All sales benefit Take This, the oldest mental health nonprofit in the game community. Since its inception in 2012, Take This mission has been to destigmatize mental health challenges in the gaming community and offer educational resources on mental health. I mean, I can't verify as far as I can tell, they're a fine charity, but I haven't checked on them or anything. But they have a goal of raising $20,000, and for $10 American, which is like 15 or something for me, you get 125 games, though they do tend to add items as the month goes on, so we'll see if that goes. But this game is in there, so if you guys want to try it, you can try it, or at least I think it is. But most of the games I'm probably going to try in the next couple of weeks will come from there, so if you want to get ahead of it, you certainly can. As for me, and me, 1,000 indie RPGs now, I think I'm up to. I'll be back next week. Thank you so much. Jumpstore, Tammy, Witchery, Uncle Kitty, GS, Zombie Wolf. Oh man, I'm setting myself up for failure. Am I forgetting anybody? I hope not. And anybody lurking, of course, for tuning in on this. I didn't mention it, but I have about a foot of snow outside, which is a lot for the area I live in, and my sore throat. But having fun together. Now, you don't have to go home, of course. You can play games wherever you want, except for here. Get out of my shop.